Hello and welcome to the Scatterbolt channel, and today I want to answer the question if you should build a gaming PC right now or wait for an Xbox Series X this holiday season. Now, according to a recent YouTube community post that I posted not too long ago, a good chunk of you actually want to know the answer to this question, and this is one that actually I've wanted to touch on because the Xbox Games Showcase was just unveiled today along with Halo Infinite. And let's not kid around. I did get partially hyped actually for making this video, in part because of that. So I did want to actually now go into that topic, since I think the Xbox Series X is a pretty relevant topic right now. And I understand a lot of you are coming from different backgrounds for exactly this sort of question. You may be someone who's on a crap top, which is basically a laptop that is on its last dying legs, and you're like, okay, am I going to finally move to a new console or maybe a gaming PC? Which should I consider? Or maybe you could be someone who's a PC gamer with a old or sort of like outdated gaming PC, and you're like, should I maybe go to a newer or build a newer gaming PC, or maybe scale back to a console like the Xbox Series X? Hopefully throughout this video, I'll be able to address each of those perspectives as I'm giving my comparisons and overall thoughts on the sort of question. And hopefully you guys will find this somewhat entertaining and actually informative, since I think the answer is not as straightforward as you think. That being said, basically my short condensed version of this video is, whenever I was actually kind of pondering the topic of this video and doing my research, I found out that the issue of this was actually more about the value of what each device will bring you over its graphical performance. And I felt like that was a bigger determining factor of going with one device over the other. Which is basically my like sugar-coated way of saying like there is no way you can build a custom gaming PC right now at probably the price of an Xbox Series X and expect it to outperform it. It's just not gonna happen. I hated to break it to you, Chief, but that ain't gonna happen. And that being said, there's still a lot of questions you gotta ponder about. It's like, which one's gonna be a better long-term solution for which sort of people will which device maybe be better for, depending on your gaming use. Of course, what features are on which device over the other, which one's gonna have more value in the long run. I think a bunch of these questions will be answered throughout this video as well. So with all that said, let's get right into the specifications of the Xbox Series X and compare it to a comparable gaming PC. So the Xbox Series X is based off of an 8-core 16-threaded processor from AMD, and it's running an RDNA 2 GPU. Now heads up, this RDNA 2 GPU, which currently the technology for that doesn't exactly exist on desktop yet, but it will be soon this November, but it'll probably only exist in the high-end graphics card market, is on the Xbox Series X, and it can support some form of ray tracing. I actually don't think the Xbox Series X is going to support full-blown like NVIDIA ray tracing like what you see on Minecraft and Quake 2. Even that on like an RTX 2080 Super is quite the mouthful to run. So I think we're going to see somewhat of a simplified or downscaled version of ray tracing on the Xbox Series X with that RDNA 2 GPU. I think full-blown ray tracing on a game like Forza Motorsport 8, or now it's just called Forza Motorsport, I think is unrealistic. That being said though, I would not underpin the power that is possible in this graphics card. Along with that, it has, I believe, a 1TB SSD or some sort of solid state configuration, and it's all in a fairly slim tower design, kind of like the NZXT case right behind me. Now the price of the Xbox Series X, I'm quite confident will be $500. The Xbox One released at $500, and the Xbox One X released at $500. And even if the specs of the Xbox Series X do seem too good to be true, because I'm not gonna lie, that console should be priced around $600, I believe it will still be marked at $500 because one, Xbox is competing with PlayStation, and two, I think Microsoft is big enough as a company, especially considering they just shut down Mixer, that they can afford to lose money every time they sell one of those Series X consoles, because they can make up for those gains with like their online transactions, game passes, and of course Xbox Gold membership. So if you kind of got the idea already, you really can't really spec out a budget gaming PC with all new parts that's going to be able to outperform a console that they're expecting to lose money on each unit they sell just so they can compete better with another console. So that should give you a little idea of what you're up against if you want to actually build a gaming PC with the expectations of outperforming one of these next-gen consoles. So our sort of benchmark for seeing how well like a budget gaming PC can game versus the Series X for the same price is going to be the recent Xbox Series X optimization badge that was just announced, which acknowledges or at least guarantees a certain list of games that'll be running for sure at 4K 60 frames per second on the Series X, which some of those games are going to be games like Hitman 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Dirt 5, Gears 5, and the Medium, along with Halo Infinite. So that's sort of going to be our standard for our budget gaming PC, which is going to be running games at 4K 60 frames per second, or in some cases 120 frames per second at 4K if we're talking about a game like Ori. So for $500 using all new parts, this right here I think is the most practical gaming PC to build, which is going to be something featuring an i3-9100F, a B365 motherboard, 16 gigabytes of 2066 megahertz DDR4 RAM, an RX 570 that's at 8 gigabytes of VRAM, a 500 gigabyte SSD, it can be M.2 or SATA, along with a 500 watt 80 plus bronze power supply, all in a micro ATX case. And that right there is going to cost you just at $500. And a 570 with 8 gigabytes of VRAM and an i3 quad core that's not hyper-threaded is not going to be able to match whatever the heck the Series X is. And note, this is something you can build right now because the Ryzen 3100 has been terrible in terms of stock since it launched, and B450 motherboards are quite hard to come by that are actually in stock, at least on Amazon. They're a little bit better on Newegg, but still a lot of them are back ordered. So while a lot of you may be like, what about Ryzen 3? Well, you can't really get Ryzen 3 or a motherboard for it, which is why I went with the 9100F for this comparison. So as you can see, a budget gaming PC is not going to be able to square up at all to an Xbox Series X, at least a budget gaming PC you can build right now, given the current stock and inventory issues. But what's a more realistic gaming PC that can come somewhat close to the Series X that you maybe want to have on hand and upgrade later down the road to either match or possibly supersede the Series X's performance? Well, for that, I went ahead and configured a $900 gaming PC, which I think will be close to the Series X in terms of performance. I could see it maybe somewhat matching that 4K 60 FPS standard of that Xbox badge that we were just talking about. But the specs for that gaming PC would be a Ryzen 3600, a B450 motherboard if you can somehow get your hands on one, 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz memory, a 1TB SSD, the Radeon RX 5700 XT 8GB graphics card, a 650 watt 80 plus gold or bronze power supply, all in again a micro ATX or ATX case. And that right there was about $900 on a good day. So that's still $400 more expensive than the Series X, and in terms of performance, it's not going to even be able to quite match it. Don't get me wrong, that $900 gaming PC can still run certain games at 4K 60 frames per second, but do I really expect it to run Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K 60? Do I expect it to run Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 4K 60 frames per second? And do I even think it might be able to run Halo Infinite at 4K 60, since the game doesn't look too graphically demanding. But that's just hoping with a lot of optimism. So yeah, in terms of performance, you cannot build a budget gaming PC at the same speed of the Xbox Series X for the same price. You're going to be looking at something that's probably almost double the price to match it, or at least come close to its performance. Now, of course, that is just the specifications part of this video. I don't want this video to exactly turn into like a PC versus console debate. I'm more or less just discussing the hardware, because of course, PCs still offer a lot of advantages over console, like the fact that they have an unlocked frame rate, unlocked resolution, you can upgrade them over time, the games in general are cheaper. Using your internet connection, you can have free online multiplayer. You don't need to pay for like an online subscription. There's a lot of hidden value in them that are more than just being a regular gaming PC. Like you can use them as a streaming device, video editing device. You can even start a career using a computer, and you can also use it like as a workstation PC. The benefits of going with a PC are numerous, but on a hardware and specification level, yes, these new consoles are probably going to outmatch PC for a pretty decent margin, especially in terms of price. So like I said at the very beginning of this video, this issue isn't so much, I think, a graphics comparison, because the new consoles are definitely going to have a leg up on that. I just think it boils down to, again, to like PC versus console. Which device do you want to ultimately go with? Do you want something that's definitely going to have the upper hand in terms of graphics, frame rate, at a lesser price that, of course, is probably smaller, so you can not only have it in your living room, but can also fit it on your desk, but has limited features and not as much usability? Or do you want a gaming PC for about the same price? It's going to be slower, or much slower really, but it's going to have not that many limitations, and you can still work on it over time. Like, you can upgrade the different components and eventually have somewhat of a respectable rig, maybe 2 years down the road, that could be as fast or faster than an Xbox Series X. And again, it's still a computer, so it has more uses than just gaming. So if you are that person who's on a crap top and you're like, oh, man, like, I just want to move on from this thing, like what I was back in 2013, and you're debating if you should go with console or PC, I'd actually see what sort of device your friends are using. If they're all on PC, Steam is a great place to be, as well as like Epic Games Launcher. So I'd go ahead and consider going PC, because ultimately it boils down to the games rather than hardware and specifications. But say you already have the luxury of having like a gaming PC and you're like, well, you know, I could build another gaming PC, but this new console looks really cool and I want to try its exclusives. And you're okay with moving on to like another environment, that being Xbox. The Series X will provide a lot of uncompromised value for the price, as long as you can get your hands on it this holiday season. So really, again, it just depends on the games, what environment you want to be working in, and ultimately which device you just want to be on in general. PC, console. Choose one. Anyways, that is my sort of comparison video between the Xbox Series X and PC, and hopefully you made it through to the very end of this video. I know it was a little bit of a dicey subject, since I am kind of hyped actually from that Xbox Series Games showcase, because Halo Infinite, so many people are getting that game wrong. Like, the art style is supposed to be minimalistic. It's supposed to like harken back to Halo CE, which I played as a kid. I have it right here in my hands. Like, anyways, if you enjoyed this video, definitely consider subscribing to the Scattervault channel, since we are here to make sure you get the best bang for your buck in terms of PC gaming, and I guess now considering a possible console solution. But if you're not a fan of subscribing, which, I mean, sure, you could be one of those people, but I have 5 other ways to connect with the channel. I have a Discord, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and an Instagram. So if you want to get connected with those 5 other things, I have those all in the description below as well. So that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the Scattervault channel, signing out.